Those who allege that what they are doing is no different than what has been done in the past. There are others who allege that it's far different from what has been done in the past. It is that fact that I think we have to exercise. There have been those who suggest that we have a plan or a deliberation or a study that enables us to figure out whether or not we have the right set of details. I don't believe we can get there without exercising it. I think we have to do something in order to figure out whether what we have is a problem. There are those, again, who say, if it's anything like it was last year, it's unacceptable to us. I think the council understands that position. The applicant has stated that they understand that position. Without exercising it, we have no method of determining who it is that's correct. So my sense is, regardless of whether we get a specific determination, my opinion, subject to the rest of you voting, but my opinion is whether or not we get an answer back from the deed restriction holders as to the use of the property, the exercising of the property in order to do what it is that's been described by the applicant is a reasonable approach. I don't think we can simply say, you can't do anything on that property until we say so, and then don't say anything. Conversely, I don't think we can say, you can do anything you want on that property and do it as long as you wish. We've got to get to the point where we understand what it is so that we can decide whether or not it is acceptable to this community. I don't see any other way of doing it. My position. Well, I didn't mean to shut everybody up. I just wanted to tell you what it is that I think.
I think the council's granted provisional short-term license for the month of June.
That's correct.
There are certain requisites. I anticipate there will be prerequisites. Now, I understand, practically speaking, until the dry run is done, there might be adjustments, and then thereafter there'll be a submission. It seems to be reasonable. I mean, the council couldn't make it any more clear that if Virginia violates the code, then they won't get their next series of licenses.
Right. That is true. The council has said the month of June is allowed under this entertainment, under this provisional entertainment license. The month of July remains to be determined, as does the remainder of the year. I don't see another way of doing this in order to get to a conclusion.
Well, I think that's prudent, because if there's problems, there's infractions in June before they get the next provisional. If they get one, they'll have to make sure there hasn't been any problems up there.
It's not without a cost. I acknowledge that there will be, whatever it is, 4 concerts, 4 Thursday concerts and 4 Sunday concerts. And those 8 concerts may, to the people that have been afflicted by what they perceive to be the issues associated with this, will be afflicted 8 times. But I don't know, we could do it 4 times, we could start to constrain it. But my point is, we need to get to the point where we decide, do we have an applicant who has the message, and do we have a population that says, yes, this seems right to us. And we may not get to that. We may get to the point where both sides continue to disagree. But I don't see any way of moving off this position unless we do something. And to your point, Solicitor, we have said we've granted a provisional license subject to an operational plan. That operational plan has issues. I would like to resolve those as part of what we do on the drug road.
I don't think that's the second application part of this discussion.
We asked in our motion the following: to grant a 1-month provisional entertainment license for the month of June to the venue with the following contingencies. A detailed operational plan to be filed no later than the 16th of May, with provision of a phone number to Councilor Mataronis has issued a plan as to how the noise will be monitored, the scheduling of a dry run to test the anticipated setup, acknowledgement that the police department will be the designated department, and that this matter will be placed on the 19th May council agenda for further review. So those are the conditions we're checking off here, if you will.
And I think that, that the second application, June 1 through September 1, is submitted, but in my opinion, not for continuation, consideration tonight, but in my opinion, most likely on June 23rd. At least the council would have maybe 6 concerts under the belt. And that was the prospective application, I thought. So I think it's appropriate that they do everything as quickly as they can. That's what they've done.
I would propose meteorology is not one of my strong suits. I would propose that we choose Tuesday and Wednesday based upon the weather next week as the first and alternate dates for this exercise. That on Tuesday afternoon, I think it ought to be late in the afternoon so that it simulates as much as possible the conditions of a concert day on a Thursday, that we exercise what it is that the vineyard proposes will be the setup for the concerts that will be conducted in the month of June. And based upon the results of that exercise, we develop a set of issues or questions that we have with respect to how it's done. It would include who is the point of contact, where are the lights positioned, where are the speakers oriented? Do we, in fact, with our decibel meters that we currently have, are we able to evaluate the sound pressure level associated with that lineup? And I would suggest we proceed to properties that are adjacent from which complaints have come and figure out what we've got there so that we can make a determination as to whether we have something that works.
That was a motion.
You know what time Tuesday you want to do it?
Late afternoon when they don't,
5 o'clock.
Yeah,
five-ish,
I'm suggesting 5 o'clock, something like
Tuesday or Thursday, you said?
Tuesday,
that. Tuesday or
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday 24th, Wednesday 25th, 28th.
I can make Tuesday, I can't make Wednesday. What's it?
Okay.
I don't need to be there, but I'd like to be there.
I think it would be important to have a quorum of the council there. So we can do
We gotta make sure Carol posts that, right?
that. Yes.
So we're gonna hold this in advance until we get the results of the dry run.
What is this?
Well, this is the second
This
application.
is the second
For
one.
September, no, I think it should be placed on the agenda for June 23rd. The council will then have at least 3 weeks' worth of knowledge when it considers matters prospective. September 1 through, I'm sorry, June 1 through September 1. So is the motion then that the council will proceed with the previously granted provisional license for the month of June, along with the other stipulations involving the dry run, a fleshed out operations plan that addresses the issues that you raised with the council.
And the provision of a point of contact who will be present for all concerts.
You all right, Jim? All right, I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Yes, sir.
Regarding the
Yes,
dry,
ma'am. Excuse me.
regarding the dry run, would it make more sense to wait till folks are home from work and also maybe to have it be dark to test the lighting?
It would, I think that'll probably, the lighting issue will probably be something that we would do separate from this, but I'd like to be able to do it in the light so that we're able to know what we're about there. But yes, we will also. Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer Cervenka, Partridgetown, representing the Eliasons, Brian and Natalie. I have a question about the second application that was subject to your, I guess, continuing it to the 23rd. It sounds like some of the dry run information that you're going to develop on the first application might be used to consider the second application. Is that correct?
If they don't comply with the requirements, Mr. Malcolm, there won't be any license for it.
Okay. My suggestion, I don't know if you're aware that they relate to different parcels.
Yes.
Okay, so they would have different setups depending on which parcels are used for what. So your dry run for the first application relating to certain parcels is not necessarily going to give you the information or all the information you would need for the second application parcels.
That is acknowledged, that's true. That's right.
Thank you, that's a good point.
One other thing I'd like to ask is that, do you have the equipment yet for the police? Because tomorrow night is a wedding, and it might be useful, although we're not going to have the dry run, maybe that the police are ready to set up the meters, because the weddings also produce some noise.
Correct. We
Could be
have
more.
already begun a series of ambient noise measurements through this week in which we've been monitoring the state of the vineyard property in a non-musical state condition. And so we have a sense of what that background is. We've been encouraged and educated by a citizen of the town, actually, or a prospective citizen of the town, who has given us some help with that process. So we have some confidence that we have a sense of what it sounds like and what it reads like now. And we don't yet know, obviously, what it will be when the music starts.
So there'll be some patrolling tomorrow, maybe I'm asking.
There'll be some.
Patrolling tomorrow on this issue?
At the time of the wedding?
Yeah, the wedding, yeah. Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so will there be then further consideration on the 23rd of, after the dry runs that you do on the first application? Will you meet again on the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and at that time, will you consider if there's information on the appeal of the zoning certificate, will you consider that decision in evaluating the first application?
I would say anything that is timely in the sense that it needs to be before us at the time of the agenda's preparation, we would consider yes.
Okay, thank you, we would like that.
I have twice acknowledged.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Actually, just two points. So this 700 people number, am I to understand that this is just a given that it's going to be accepted? I mean, first of all, in my view, 700 people is a wildly intensification of the sound sense. And second of all, it doesn't say how they're going to count the 700 people, or if they're sticking to the 700 people. It just said, we assume, we estimate that 700 people will come. So if 2,000 people come, it's like, oh yeah, well, sorry, 2,000 people came. I do not. Personally, I feel that 700 people twice a week or once a week for the thing, and whatever they said for the jazz concert, is wildly higher than it was. It's definitely intensification of use. I don't know why you said to just think that it's going to be okay, or why we're accepting that number. I don't understand. The second thing I have to say is, by what authority are you waiving the Ag Trust rules that you cannot have parking and concerts on Ag Trust land? You don't have that permission. At one point, you were very insistent that you had to have the requisite permissions. And then as soon as they threatened to sue, you said, okay, you know, we'll just have a dry run. Under what authority can you have a dry run?
That's an interesting perception that you would attribute the change, or what you described as a change of heart, to our fear of a lawsuit.
I'm not alone.
I'm just telling you that that is not personally my reaction, so I'm surprised at that. But I acknowledge that you may hold that position. Here's what I think is at play here. We have a situation where all last year the property was used in a certain fashion, and it is now that we're saying we need to have a determination. When we made that decision that we need a determination as to the proper use of the property, that consensus between the parties who hold the development rights to that property has not been forthcoming. Not due to lack of effort, it just lots of circumstances have prevailed. My concern is that we don't simply mark time with this process. Rather, we exercise the dry run, the ability to look at how the speaker placement is there, such that when that decision comes, we can implement it. Were we to have parking on property that is later determined to not require, to not be allowed to have parking on it, then at that point we'll stop having, actually we will not. The owners of the development rights will say, stop parking on our property, on the property that we have development rights over. But our position as the town council is to figure out what do we do about the fact that someone has applied for an entertainment license who used certain properties last year and wishes to use them again. What we have implemented is both a noise ordinance change and an entertainment license, which says you can't make noise above this level and you can't do it at certain times and you have to follow other rules. We've also said, to your point, that if you have a development right that's been sold to someone else, you need to get their permits. Our problem is that we're at a point where we don't have the answer to that yet. And so we're trying to get to the point where we have the other features of this determined. So that when the time comes that says you either can or can't use it, then we can implement whichever of the sites is allowed. And then we can also address the question of whether we think that what we have now is an intensification of use.
Okay, but to your point, the Ag Trust of Little Compton has said that the bandstand is not in compliance. They have said that, but yet you're still allowing music on the bandstand. How does that fit into what you just told me?
If the Ag Trust has said that,
Well, we were told at an Ag Trust meeting that they were sent a letter saying that it wasn't in compliance.
if that is the case, then that says that the music, then the issue of the bandstand's presence on that property has to be determined by those two parties.
Sorry, I don't understand.
The council is responsible for exercising governance of the town. It appoints members of the Ag Trust to do that specific feature. If in fact the process by which they have acquired development rights to that property has resulted in them reaching a determination that that bandstand must be moved, that's something that they need to exercise. We can tell them to do it. We could replace members on the Ag Trust until it gets done. We can take those sorts of actions. But I think first what has to happen is they need to decide, and they are not the only owner, as to whether or not that represents the position of all of the ownership of that property. That's not before us. What's before us is an entertainment license. I realize your assertion is that we're somehow dodging this question on the basis of the fact that we don't have the development rights, we the council. But the reality is we have an entertainment license before us that we're trying to get to the point of deciding whether or not it's appropriate for it to be issued. We can't take any steps in that direction if we simply wait for all these pieces to fall in place and then go and decide whether or not the noise level is sufficient. I'm only suggesting that this process will allow us to determine whether or not the preparations that have been made are appropriate. In the middle of this, it could be determined by the owners of the development rights that they want their property back, in which case it becomes a moot point. But I don't know that yet.
Didn't we get a response from the other owners of the USDA, which was it?
They wanted to study it, but
They didn't issue a cease and desist. They said if there is a violation, they want to study. So they do have a partial response. They don't have the one from the Ag Trust particularly, but that's not on the applicant, it's on the trust. The trust is the one that's not forthcoming given the document. It's that body over the town.
certainly the trust has not contacted the council and said, don't issue a license.
That is correct, that's
No,
correct.
because they said at the last Ag Trust meeting that they wanted to wrap this up in some kind of like, deal.
I would urge them to do that.
Pardon?
I would urge them to do that.
But,
Well,
Yeah.
in the back.
Mr. Richard.
Bill Richard from the Ag Trust. The letter sent to the vineyard from the Ag Trust is a notice of violation that they didn't ask permission to build bandstands. There's no disagreement by any party in the whole discussion whether that's a violation or not. It is a violation. The issue as to the legality of the existence of the bandstand or pergola is pending. We were just at a hearing or a meeting at the NRCS today about that. The state has not made a determination. It was also agreed jointly amongst the vineyard, the Ag Trust, and neighborhood representatives that we would seek the state and federal opinions on that matter. Those opinions are pending, so that's where we stand. That's why you don't have a letter from the Ag Trust. As to the issue as to whether the Ag Trust is going to issue a letter saying, don't issue a license, I don't think that's our responsibility. That's not what we're being asked to do. We're being asked to judge whether the applied for activities and also physical conditions at the vineyard comply with the deed development rights. Because those determinations haven't been made yet, we haven't been able to issue that letter.
I gotta put it in simple terms so I can understand it. So basically what you're saying, Bill, is that it's a violation that they did it because they didn't seek permission to do it. There's no determination yet whether it is indeed wrong. It shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Right. So that's kind of the limbo then, I guess it's in.
And in the meantime, it was jointly determined by the three groups, if you will, that are involved, the neighborhood, vineyard, and the Ag Trust, that we would seek our co-easement holders' opinions on that, as well as the allowability of the activities under the easement.
Before we go further, let me apologize to someone that I agreed I would ask speakers to come to the microphone. I did not do that. I did not anticipate the number of people that would be speaking. I would ask that speakers now come to the microphone in order that all can hear, because there are folks who have expressed the fact that the acoustics in here are poor. It is. Yes.
Would you say your name also, sir?
John Marshall, Scout Point Road. Isn't it true that the application for the license, to have an entertainment license, has a checkoff in which you are asked to state whether there is any conflict with any holder of an easement on this property? I believe that was not checked. Is that right?
There is a property, there is an application. The original application said, yes, there is, and that is the application that uses lots 8, 6, and uses 2 lots that are under Ag Trust development right in advance. There is another application in which it was checked no, and those use 2 properties that are not subject to that conveyance.
Well, as long as from January until now, because the question is asked, an applicant would be wise to clarify it and give proof so as not to be held up by that. Correct?
Not to be held up by the absence of a concurrence from the deed holder, from the development rights holder.
The assumption is that they would not be encouraged to proceed if they had an outstanding issue.
Right.
Because they knew who their easement holders were when they bought the property.
Right.
They knew what your requirements were going to be as of January, and here we are. So it seems to me that they're either poorly prepared at best, or a little careless about acting on what they now know is an issue, which is not so good either, or at the worst, that they might be playing it.
It's moved. You ready to vote? Yes, ma'am.
I see it here.
If I could ask.
I'm Claire Johnson. I live 1.5 miles northeast of the vineyard in Oak Forest. My question is, how are you going to measure the 65 decibel limit? Where are you going to measure it from? The footage? Is there a specific amount of distance that the machinery will measure that from? As I've been led to believe, when the police are called to measure the decibels, it would be from the perimeter of the complainee's property. That is so variable, and it's so subjective. When you measure sound decibels, I believe you have a specific amount of distance to get a proper, correct reading. The second thing is the reservoir, being a water body, is a conduit for sound. There are no trees, there's nothing. Any sound produced, if the speakers are facing the reservoir, the music is going to be doubled, tripled. It will just be exceptionally loud. So I just had to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. You are correct. You are correct that the measurement is at the accessible portion of the property that is affected by the noise coming from another source. And so we did that, again, as a first cut. We think it's the right way to do it. We'll see as we exercise it. But the monitoring will be done at an accessible part of the property. We originally had it on the porch of the house, but it was pointed out that that might not be where the people who live there spend their time. Therefore, we made it an accessible part of the property. You're also certainly correct that any sound that has been begun on the other side of the reservoir has little to impede it from getting to the far side of the reservoir. So at the recipient's property is where the measurement will occur. And that's where the 65 decibel level, which we again have borrowed from other places who've done this. We don't yet know if that makes sense for us. It's our first shot at this. All of this is driving us toward the fact that we are anxious to get facts and so that we can make determinations. Right now we are dealing with a great number of hypotheses about how things work, and I acknowledge that those of you who have spoken about our apparent interest in getting on with this are ignoring either A, the applicant's unwillingness to give us what we've asked for, or B, the reality of what it's going to do to somebody who listens to it. But we need to endure a short period of this in order to figure out whether we've got it right or not. It is not our intention to simply say, well, that's the ordinance we made, and I guess it didn't work out, but that's too bad. Our intention is to revise and tune and all that, but we've got to get to the point where we have something produced that we can be at issue about. I am sorry that that's the way it is. I'd rather that it be that we inherited a set of requirements. We didn't. So we've established them, and we're attempting to validate whether or not they make sense. Yes, sir.
My name's Larry Anderson. Just to follow up on the comment that I believe was Mr. Marshall made about the compliance with the deed for development rights letter of affirmation. At the previous meeting, I pointed out that that even though you had passed your amended ordinance in January, the union representatives did not request from the Agricultural Conservancy Trust formally until April 13th a letter of affirmation. I just attended, as did a number of other folks in this room, in the meeting in Warwick of the Agricultural Lands Preservation Commission. There were lawyers galore there. And if people hear me correctly, but if I understood what was going on, only today did the lawyer for the vineyard, or this week and today, submit and request a letter of affirmation from the Agricultural Lands Preservation Commission and permission, which they should have asked for a year ago, to under the deed for development rights to construct the structure they did. So, you know, Mr. Marshall, someone was careless here or intentionally ignoring the requirements of the ordinance.
My name is Matthew Gillette. I'm a close neighbor of Claire, 18 Seconic Trail in Forest. There's been a lot of hand waving that's been done about the noise levels, etc. I wondered if anyone had proposed that, likely at the expense of Seconic Vineyards, an actual engineering study be done of the acoustic propagation with the neighboring area.
No, there is not.
Thank you.
The reality of where we live is that we have very little in the way of in-house capability. We have often sought that capability from elsewhere, and we haven't gotten to the point where I expect we will get, which is to say, we need the professional expertise to show us what the physics of this process is. We haven't gotten there yet. There's an effort at this point to try to take a step in that direction.
Thank you. And if I may, if you would like assistance in that, I was pursuing a PhD in computer engineering and acoustics. I can help you find some people with much experience in the field of acoustics and its propagation.
I'd be happy to talk to you as early as tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Cervenka on behalf of the Alliance again. I just have two follow-up questions. I know, again, that you're taking up the so-called new application, the May 16th application, formally on the 23rd. But I did want to ask about you had mentioned the written description, the need for a written description that comes along with the operational plan as opposed to just a site plan. Is that something that's going to be supplied also with the new application such that it can be reviewed prior to the 23rd?
We hope so.
Has it been requested of the applicant?
They affirmed that they were going to do that after the drive.
For both?
No, for dry run there. Then they put their people operations plan in.
Okay. And then the second question, it's really just to clarify the ownership on that new application. While the applicant's counsel are here, it relates to parcels 810 and 18. I just wanted to confirm that 18 is held by a different entity and that that's just being proposed for parking. Is that correct?
So,
question's a good one. You'll know that the vineyard lawyers have not said it. So, and that's a question I think you could ask them. But the ownership of it, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts with Ken. I mean, you can ask them. But
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I thought I would ask now because people might know.
Well, the only reason why I say that is when I submitted the zoning appeal, I had to identify the owners within 200 feet of the lot subject to the zoning certificate. And I'm fairly confident that I could be wrong, and they can correct that 1-8, which is proposed for parking, is owned by a separate entity than Dionysus Acquisition LLC, maybe equity partners, but that's how it's listed in your vision appraisal.
Mr. Howell knows all the history, all the
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
Ready to vote?
Amy Berry, 120 West Main Road. I'll keep it very brief because I know the council is anxious to put this to bed for this evening. I know there was earlier discussion regarding the historical use of the property, and there is debate as to whether or not the current practices and the practices that were used last year were historical of the Sampsons and the previous owners. So I'd like to submit to the council, I know I've submitted this before, but it's an article entitled Secundit Vineyard launches new Sunday jazz series, and it describes how this is a brand new event that they're bringing to the vineyard in the effort to expand the musical entertainment. And so I'd submit to the council that the Sunday night or Sunday afternoon concert series is outside the purview of the historical use of the Secundit Vineyard.
Sunday or Thursday?
The Sunday.
The Sunday.
I have copies for everyone.
Thank you. If I can ask
May 24th or 25th, late afternoon, 5 o'clock, to exercise the vineyard's proposal for a setup in the month of June,
I'm here.
and the provisional
She's
for with
confirming the
contract.
council.
So the motion before us is that we will, on May 24th with May 25th as a rain date, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, in the late afternoon, approximately 5 o'clock, exercise what Carolyn Secundit Vineyard proposes for a setup for the month of June. And we will find out on that day who is that point of contact that is going to be present throughout the concert duration.
I believe I moved that secondary.
Right, that's done. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Was it 5?
Yes. Now,
Minutes.
yeah, well, we have a public hearing scheduled at 7:15, so I'd like to accommodate that.
It's not as accurate as you said.
Am I in the camera way? Sorry. I think I just
In continuation, I'd like to consider a public hearing for submittal of a recreation grant. The recreation grant that we're proposing to submit has been drafted by Rebecca Elwell. It's in front of you. It's a small recreational development grant up to $100,000. This specific grant will be for $52,400, and the purpose of it, I'm sorry, the funding is $52,400. The grant would be seeking $41,920 for the purpose of restoring and extending the memorial wall which goes around Veterans Field and at this point stops at approximately the point where the trailer that is being used by the constructors of the recreation field sits. Our intention is to then continue that memorial wall all the way down Meeting House until we get to the offices at the western end of Meeting House, at the western end of the recreation field. This item was removed from our recreation field proposal contract because of the cost that we were not able to cover. So this would represent a nice way to complete that process. There are a number of reasons why it's important. Those have been articulated in Mrs. Elwell's efforts for us, and I thank her for that. Specifically, what it would be is a line of demarcation, a prevention of children getting onto Meeting House chasing soccer balls, as well as cars getting onto the recreation field as they are accustomed to doing back when it used to be called, well, it still will be called, but back when it used to be the pecking lot with a swamp in the middle of it. It's not going to be that any longer. We want to ensure that we don't have transgressions. So this wall will first and foremost honor those citizens of Little Compton and their predecessors who have fought on behalf of the country in various wars. That's commemorated on the plaque downstairs as on your way out of the building. Right. The motion is made and seconded to apply for the grant. Is there any public comment with respect to this matter?
I do have one comment.
Go ahead.
I had a gentleman just call me today. He said he's tearing down a bunch of stone walls, and he lives in town, is looking for stone wall. I'm not sure if he's looking for money or a place to get rid of the stone wall these days.
All right.
There's stone available.
Very good. I haven't lived here long enough to know this for sure, but I know that there's West Main Road stone, there's Commons stone, there's Secana Point stone. It needs to be the right kind of stone. But we will not look that give Dorson up.
I was given that person's name.
Fantastic. That's perfect. Because we really thank you. Further discussion, any public comment? All in favor of the submission, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So thank you for your effort.
Yeah, thank you.
The next item of business is the approval of minutes of May 7th.
Motion to approve minutes of May 7, 2016 Town Council meeting. Unless anybody has any questions or comments?
I'd comment, but I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. By way of announcements, the Memorial Day Parade will be held on May 30th. A ramp will be installed for access of wheelchairs at the base of that, and we want to be sure that the citizens of the town are aware of that, because that will potentially be in the way there if you're intending to park in that vicinity. Boards and commissions vacancies. We have a number of boards and commissions whose members require replacement or reinstatement. There are 2 positions on the Housing Trust, a planning board member, an Ag Trust member, the Harbor Master and his assistant, and 3 pension committee members, all of whom are at the point of reappointment. Any letters of interest should be submitted to the town clerk by June 9th in order to fill those vacancies, or for candidates to fill those vacancies. In addition, by June 23rd, the clerk has requested that the following vacancies be announced and interested parties submit their letters of application. One is for a position on the Zoning Board of Review as a member, and the second is on the Zoning Board of Review as an alternate member. In old business, I'd like to consider the provisional offer of employment to a prospective firefighter, EMT. I'd like to express appreciation to the moderator of the budget committee and to the town's business manager for their exceptional preparation. I'm pleased that it proceeded in a manner that was reflective of the effort that went into making it happen. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I think the moderator did a fantastic job explaining everything, and he was right on the ball. He was right on his game plan.
Good. Thank you. The next is to receive a briefing regarding the Rhode Island Energy Challenge. You have in front of you a multi-page packet. I'd like to turn to page 3, which has the description of the Rhode Island Energy Challenge. What National Grid and the state organizations are asking us to consider sponsoring is this energy challenge in Little Compton, and their technique is to do what they describe as find your 4. Ask residents to take 4 simple energy efficiency actions at home by signing up on a website. We turn over a couple more pages to page 5. Examples of that are: you call for a home energy assessment, you recycle your old refrigerator, you put in LEDs and save a lot of money per month, use an advanced power strip. There's a number of other things. What they're trying to do, this is another aspect of the solar effort, the Solarize Little Compton effort, that strives to lower the demand in the July, particularly in July and August, which right now is driving National Grid toward consideration of an upgrade to the Tiverton substation. The effort is to try to get people to conserve, put in LEDs, get rid of old high energy equipment in order to drop that load so as to not require that upgrade, so as to not have that borne by all of us in our electric bills. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. It's a question of, it's really individual. I don't see any downside to it. We offer it to the people in town. If they choose to sign up, they can. We don't keep track of it or know about it. They keep the bean count and decide whether we are I forget what we get to be called, the next Rhode Island energy champion. Many aspirations I have, that has not been one of the top ones, but it could be. So I'm looking for a motion.
Well, no, just to put it on the record too, that these, when you come in with your LED bulbs and you can get Wi-Fi thermostats and they can do something, they'll actually offer insulation, part of it. This is your money you're getting back. In your electric bill, you pay, I forget the name of the charge. It's a charge on your bill for renewable energy or something like that. So you're not getting free stuff, technically, you're getting what you've already put into the system back. So it's to your advantage to take advantage of this particular program.
That's a good point. So the question is, do you wish to endorse this energy challenge? And if so, I will convey that back and they will kind of take it from there.
We'll endorse it.
Second. Motion made and seconded to endorse the Rhode Island Energy Challenge for Little Compton. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is sitting as the Board of License Commissioners to request for Little Compton Game Club for a one-day beverage license.
I make a motion to grant one-day beverage license to Game Club for June 5th, 2016.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
I'm saying,
4 votes in favor, 1 abstention. Thank you. Next is a communication from the Art Cafe for permission to hold the second outdoor fundraising event for Singing Out Against Hunger on June 25th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. to benefit Little Compton distributed food banks.
this raises an interesting question. Are they a nonprofit?
There's a representative of the Art Cafe sitting with us.
Because
It is a nonprofit. All donations go directly to the food bank.
And the only reason I ask the question is because of the new ordinance and all that's going on. If you're a nonprofit, you don't need to apply for a state license. But you have to have proof that you're a nonprofit. If you're not a nonprofit, you have to apply for an entertainment license. But the noise ordinance is the same.
Sure, I get that. I know it's
So
a touchy night to bring this up.
Well, the question, is the Art Cafe a nonprofit? Or who
No.
you're donating to is a nonprofit?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, who we're donating to. Is that what you're talking about, Paul?
Yeah,
Is that
that's,
what you mean? Is that
well,
what-
I'm not trying to,
We're not benefiting.
I'm not trying to get into legalities, that's his job.
Okay.
But if you're sponsoring the event,
Yes.
you're not a nonprofit, you need an entertainment license, I think.
Oh, okay.
But if the group is using your place to sponsor their event, I would say that would be a nonprofit. So I think your application should say that this group wants to sponsor this event on your property
Gotcha.
or your business, but you are not the entities pulling the entertainment license.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
There we go. Second.
Discussion. How many people do you anticipate to participate?
Yeah,
How many did you have last year?
It wasn't last year, it was the prior year. This will be our second time, so it was 2014. Well, actually, the day that we did it, it was kind of drizzling, so it was under wrap, it was pretty mellow. The music was just spread out throughout the day, that people were just coming and going. It wasn't like we were bombarded at a particular time. Because it's throughout the day, it seems to everyone.
There's a parking issue
Mhm.
in Compton.
I say you probably never had more than 30 people there at once.
Yeah.
Or 25, I mean, it was pretty, wasn't a smash hit.
Right.
We're hoping, I'm trying to have an art show the same day, so we're hoping to get more people, so it'll be like an art opening, no different than an art opening.
You all set, Chief?
Yeah, I recall there was no problem whatsoever with the traffic, and there were no complaints of the music being loud that day at all.
Motion's made and seconded, sir.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Parking the other place.
No, the only part of my place, because there's going to be another issue there that night. There may be a music issue that night.
You have battles.
No wedding going on.
Oh, that.
We're done early.
Yeah, we'll be done. It says 4, it's probably going to be sooner,
I
but.
think we should move on to communications too, if everyone is ready.
Yes, sir.
A request from Linda Gomes, doing business as the Stand on the Hill at 33 Colebrook Road, for victualling and peddler's license.
Does anybody know who this lady is?
Just the master of a store.
Oh, okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
An application for an entertainment license from Wishing Stone Farm at 25 Shaw Road to cover the small dinner events for their association and public, featuring food from the farm and other local products.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Next item is a resolution adopted by the town of East Ranch supporting House Bill 8005 regarding student transportation legislation. It appears to me this is not an issue of concern to us, but I may be educated by someone who thinks otherwise.
Motion placed on file.
Second.
Discussion, there's a member of the school committee here. Do you know of this bill?
Yes. I believe this is really not something that would fall under your purveyance. I think this is something that really should happen at the school committee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And a request from Carolyn Locke of South Coast Artists, who operate the Open Studios events twice a year for governmental contact to be designated for a grant application. Apparently there's a need for a member of the council to be the point of contact. I am willing to be that member if you would like to appoint me.
So moved.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
The consent calendar.
Motion placed the consent calendar on file unless anybody wants to pull anything.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? And the payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.